I think it's two ends of the spectrum here. I think one, it's Duke being really good, and it's also the ACC still just not being that great. Duke versus the ACC in the last 2 years have been completely dominant. They're 35-2. Average margin of victory is over 20 this season alone. You have to look at two programs like Gonzaga and Houston to see even somewhat of a similarity in dominance over a conference. And I wanted to throw Gonzaga in there because they're kind of that mid-major team that we all think of that's not actually a mid-major. But again, Duke, 35-2, average margin of victory over 20. Gonzaga, if you look at their seasons between 2020 and 2022, 28-1. One of those times they had a 22.9 points per game win average, as well as 27 points per game. Houston, you have to look at 2023 to 2025. 34-4 over 2 years with a 12.5 and a 13.9 points per game win percentage. Now, the thing that is similar between Gonzaga and Houston, both of those programs played for a national championship. Maybe you could say that last year should have been the season that Duke got to the national championship and they kind of blew it there at the end to a Houston team that we're talking about. This Duke has a really good chance not only to get back to the Final Four, but get to the national championship and win it. And right now, as someone who doesn't like Duke, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to see a national championship game with Duke in it, even if they were to lose. I just don't want to see it right now. But that's the thing with this Duke team, and specifically this Duke program, and where they could potentially become the Gonzaga of the West Coast Conference and make the ACC look like the WCC, which is extremely embarrassing for the rest of the conference. And if we look at the teams in the conference that at some point this season, everybody or some people picked them to be Duke's challenger. We've seen Clemson, we've seen Louisville, North Carolina for a bit, Virginia. At some point throughout the season, whether it was preseason, in the ACC play, or like we saw with the Virginia game last weekend, they played Clemson. That ended up in a 13-point win, and at one point they were up 22. Virginia, 26-point win, 28-point lead at one point. 2 wins against Louisville. One of those was a 30-point win at home, 11-point win. And that game, they outscored them by 20 in the second half. And then UNC, which we're going to get to in a minute, so hold on to that thought about North Carolina. Throughout the year, I've had to hear that the ACC is back. The ACC is getting itself back to being the premier conference of college basketball. They're going to get 8 teams in. And while some of that is true, it's also a bunch of kind of pixie dust. That's not really realistic when you look at the landscape of college basketball right now. I would currently rank the ACC 4th out of the Power 5. I think the Big 10 and Big 12 aren't even close. The SEC has gotten a lot better. Plus, they played a challenge against each other in the SEC 1. And if you look at the Big East, at least there's some sort of competition for the 1 and 2 teams between St. John's and UConn, which is something the ACC hasn't really had this year. Now, the ACC has a great future. I think coaches coming in like Ryan Odom, Jay Lucas, Will Wade, they're pushing the brands in the right direction of the ACC. It's been a lot of turnover over the last few years. You've seen guys like Roy, Kay, Boeheim, Hamilton, Larrañaga, all these guys leave the ACC who were pillars of the conference for 20, 25, and then 30 years in some cases. And with new coaches potentially coming in at Pitt, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Boston College, Georgia Tech, you have another wave of hopefully new up-and-coming coaches that are trying to cut their teeth in college basketball. The problem is, though, I don't know if even some of these young coaches that are coming in, like Jay Lucas at Miami, if he has a good 3-4 years at Miami, is he now going to look to go to the Big 10 or go to the Big 12? Does Kansas come calling when Self retires? Does Houston come calling when Sampson retires? It's becoming now a landscape where the ACC might actually be a stepping stone and not the location you're trying to get to anymore. And when we look at what the ACC has done this year, I would set the over-under on teams getting to the second weekend of March at 2.5 right now. Duke, I would say, is a lock. Virginia, to me, is a should be. But then with teams like Carolina, NC State, Miami, SMU, you're looking at them on the 8-9 line or the 6-7 line. Realistically, in that second round matchup, they're all going to have to play a 1 seed, 2 seed, or 3 seed, barring some crazy upsets. And so when you look at that, I don't know if the ACC will get 3 teams in. I would like to believe so, but realistically, Duke is the only one that I'm like, yeah, for sure. I think they're getting to the second weekend. Everybody else, there's a massive case to say they're not getting out of the first weekend this year. Now, back to Duke. This Duke team. There's 2 main points with this Duke team. One, that's extremely concerning. Every year from this point on, you know they're going to get 3 or 4 or 5 stars, if not more, as well as bring in these transfer pieces that are going to be utility guys like Malik Brown, James, like we saw last year. They're going to always have a squad, and if they're healthy, they're going to be difficult to deal with. That's really not going to falter, I think, over the next few years. You look at the decisions they made with a chief basketball officer with Jason Tatum coming back to the program. The other thing that is really, really concerning, if you're someone who's not a Duke fan in the ACC, Scheyer is clearly getting better every single year as a head coach. I think in year 1, if I remember correctly, they lost to Tennessee in the round of 32. And at that point, it was like, I don't know if Scheyer's got this. He might not have been the pick he might not have been the right guy to succeed. Coach K. I thought they got outcoached. I thought they got outcoached. I thought they got outmanned. They got out physicaled. And all Scheyer has done since then is basically respond and fixed it. Now, last year, you could say maybe the question mark on that team was that they couldn't win close games. And if you look at this year, they've lost 2 games. One game they trailed for 0.4 seconds, which was the Carolina win at the Dean Dome. And then the Texas Tech game in which they blew a 16-point lead, I believe, in the second half to lose that game by a point. But on the flip side of that late game situation, this season, they have multiple wins that are within 2 possessions against teams like Kansas, Michigan, Michigan State, and Florida. 2 of those teams are probably going to be 1 seeds. Maybe Florida has to stick in at the 2, but realistically, I think you have 5 1 seeds this year. It's just who gets the 4th spot. So you can't even really keep harping on that with Scheyer and this Duke team because they're showing this year they can win games that are close. On the road, in neutral environments, at home, they've done it all. He has ACC regular season banner. He has ACC tournament. He has the Final Four. The only thing left for him to prove and get to this point is to win a national championship game, which realistically could be this season for Duke. And I'm not saying they're going to win it, but everything that we've seen up to this point, they're putting themselves in the best advantageous situation to get back to the Final Four. And at that point, it's can you win 2 games in 3 days in Indianapolis? Which brings us to our final thing, Scheyer. ACC Coach of the Year, I think it's a done deal. I don't think he should be discredited or disproved because it's Duke. You still have to coach the talent. You still have to get them to buy in. And that's the thing with this Duke team. They're very detail oriented. I don't know if anybody saw the video from Duke Blue Planet at halftime of their Duke Michigan game. You have a group of kids that are extremely bought in. They've done a terrific job on everything being buttoned up at Duke. And I think because of that, and because of him coming in after a legend like K, whether you want to admit you like him or not, he is a legend of college basketball. You've seen him grow every single year as a coach. And this Duke team, while maybe not as talented from an NBA level as last year's team, I think this team has way more potential to win the national championship than what we saw from last year's group with Cooper Flagg. And you got to give them their credit. They have earned and are deserving of the title of being the most premier college basketball team in the country. And the crazy thing is they might only get better and better as the years continue on. Now, I mentioned earlier the North Carolina thing, and we're going to get to that now. As a Carolina fan and as a Carolina grad, I'm hoping I make this video of how dominant Duke is, how great they've been this season. They're blowing everybody out, and maybe it's some sort of weird back-end jinx that causes them to lose at home against UNC. Now, I think the game is going to go favorably in Duke's way. I think they're going to be extremely motivated. I think it's going to be a game that is going to look like what we've seen Duke against Clemson, against Virginia, against Louisville, against Notre Dame, against NC State. What they've been doing, they've been on an absolute freight train since that Carolina loss. The only way you're getting them is going to be the rivalry card. If somehow, some way Carolina goes in there, a place that they actually have some decent success over the last few years and under Hubert Davis, maybe this is the way they can win it, and then we can throw half this video out of there. But realistically, I think Duke probably puts the hammer down. They right the ship of the one loss they had against Carolina in Chapel Hill, which was a weird, crazy game as it was. And we've seen them now be one of the most dominant teams over a 2-year period in their conference in recent memory. So shout out Jon Scheyer. He's becoming a great coach. Shout out Duke. They've been a great team this season. We're going to see how this fares come March, and we're also going to see how the ACC fares come March. But I'm pretty worried as a fan of the ACC what the conference as a whole is going to do when we get to the tournament. So appreciate you guys being here. Please like the video, hit subscribe to enter your name in the portal, and we will see you guys on the next one. Happy March.